Hello, welcome to the next episode of Josef's Fireside Chat series. I'm Sam, I'm COO and co-founder of Josef, and every other week, I get joined by a special guest. This week is a particularly special episode. I'm joined by Whitney Stefko, who is Director and Senior Counsel at Ford. Whitney, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Sam. I'm really looking forward to our discussion.
Me too. I'm particularly excited by today's discussion. I think the work that you and Darth and the team at Ford do is really inspiring and really cutting edge, and there's a lot for us to learn. So with that, let's dive straight in. You were instrumental in building and I'm going to get the name right, the Policy and LegalOps Plus team at Ford from scratch. Tell us, what were the first moves and how did you tackle this?
Absolutely. Kudos. You nailed the name right off the bat. So well done on getting it correct. It was really a collective effort with Darth Vaughn, who's now our Associate General Counsel and Managing Director, the leadership at Ford Motor Company, and a variety of champions who really understood and appreciated that there was a lot of value in putting an operational infrastructure into our policy organization. I come from litigation. I'm a recovering litigator, practiced for a number of years, left the practice of law, went into tech, spent about a year at a cryptocurrency hedge fund, which was enough to scare me back into law. But at that point in time, more at the intersection of data, technology, and how we were thinking about the practice of law and making it more efficient, building sort of the next generation of legal service delivery. I was an external consultant for a number of years to a variety of different corporate legal departments. And as a result of that, started working with Ford. And when we got some new leadership in, they said, hey, how come this function of operations is not a permanent one here? We should think about doing that. And Darth Vaughn, who was in-house at that time, said, yeah, that's what I got brought here to do. Let's make a team here. This sounds great. And I was part of that contingency. So about 2 years ago, 2 years in September, we officially formed what was then the legal operations function at Ford Motor Company. And as they say, no good deed goes unpunished, and with good work comes more work. So last summer, our remit expanded to support sort of a greater policy infrastructure. We truly are a team that supports not only operational innovation, people, process, and tech, but also spend innovation. Everything from what's going in and out of our policy infrastructure. And we're doing it with a pretty lean, mean, green team. So really exciting times for us. We're, absolutely mesmerized by what is happening in the industry in terms of technological advancements, but really making sure that we're bringing our people and process along for the ride in that journey as well.
Cool. Very exciting. Staying with that building the team idea, one of my favorite talks at Clock this year at CGI in Vegas was from you and Tom Stevenson, and a rep from Meta as well.
Janine Dixon. Yep.
That's right, Janine. And you said, or the panel said, curiosity beats pedigree now, whereas that might not have always been the case, right? What did you mean by that? And how does that tie into building a team like this?
Yeah. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I'm speaking on my own behalf and not on the behalf of Ford Motor Company while we're chatting here today. I think that we are moving into a world of just an entirely different skill set requirement. And that is changing how we're looking at not only talent we're bringing in, but also upskilling of talent. I think one of our big focus areas, particularly as I'm thinking about building out my team and I'm thinking about what the future looks like and what a future talent pool looks like, I'm focused a lot more on people's resilience, on their ability to be agile, on their ability to be curious, on their ability to be flexible. I think I may have given this example at CGI as well, but I recently saw a job posting on LinkedIn at DoorDash that was, a lawyer who's going to be responsible for robotics and sort of generative AI that were connected with robotics, like products that we've just never seen in the marketplace before.
Yeah.
And so whether we're talking about operational professionals, whether we're talking about legal professionals, whether we're talking about, just any skilled professional, I think that what we need now is not necessarily, your diploma or degree from a certain educational institute, but is instead your ability to be able to move with how fast things are evolving. And that skill set is not necessarily represented by where you went to school or what degrees you hold or how you have been educated. I think it's often more represented in your diversity of experiences and what hobbies you have and just how interested you are in learning the latest and greatest. So I think it's just a true shift away from maybe what was more traditionally, a pedigree based industry into now what we're calling more of a curiosity based industry.
Mm. I mean, I find one of the reasons why I loved that message was there's so much doom and gloom. This conversation around whether AI is going to augment a lawyer's day-to-day work and increase the pie, or whether it's going to take that work away and heaps of people are going to lose their jobs. This, for me, I mean, those are important conversations, and I don't want to say that they don't matter, because they do, and this will impact people. But that I found this a really hopeful message. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It is hopeful, but I think it's also a little bit scary depending on
Mm.
your position in the world and how you really think about mindset. There's a fantastic book. If your listeners haven't read it, or if you haven't read it, it's called Mindset. It's by Dr. Carol Dweck, and it
Okay.
talks about fixed versus growth mindset. It's one of my favorite books. I read it at least once a year. I think it's just such a good cornerstone of analysis on whether or not we are standing in a position relative to the world of a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And I think that there are good skills in both camps. Like, I think in some instances it is good to have a fixed mindset. I think in other instances growth is more preferable. But we as humans tend to lean more primarily into one camp or the other. And
Mm-hmm.
my experience with lawyers has been generally they tend to be predominantly fixed mindset. And so I just think it is sort of this new world that we're moving into and living in, where the growth mindset is going to be more important than ever. And being able to control the dial of which camp you're in becomes even more important, as we need to be critical thinkers around evolving technology, how we're thinking about, integrating that technology into not only our products and companies and businesses, but also on, the legal service side of the house.
Mm. Yeah, fascinating. I mean, I remember even I'm an ex-litigator as well. And when I made the move into the world of tech, as you did, I remember actually one of my like mentors, early days, who was very high up at Apple in the product team, telling me, when you enter these spaces, which as a lawyer, you'd be terrified of uncertainty. I didn't know how it was going to go. I was trying to map everything out and figure out where we were going to land, whether it was a sales call or a customer call or a product call. And she said to me something that has stuck with me, right? Enter that space with curiosity
Mm-hmm.
and you will get so much more out of it. And for me, what unlocked that was what she called my genius space. What unlocked that was finding out what lets you enter your genius space. And for me, it's fun. If I
Mm-hmm.
can have fun with the person, then I can enter that space of curiosity and have that growth mindset. And if I don't, it's harder for me to access. Yeah. Anyway, do you have any advice for lawyers watching who are terrified?
Well, first of all, fantastic advice, and not advice that I hear very often in legal service delivery.
Yeah.
I think, at least here in the US, a lot of sort of the sentiment is often around you're providing advice and counsel, and clients are paying a very high ticket value
Mhm.
for that. And so it's important that your competence comes off as equitable to the value that those clients are paying. And so I think often we are sort of creating these fixed mindset legal professionals in the way that we just engage in the business of law.
Mhm.
You're expected to know all the answers. You're expected to find out all the answers. All the answers are expected to be correct. And so I do think there is sometimes a little bit of a conflict and sort of a tension between this fixed and growth mindset and how we think about upskilling into the curiosity lane. And I just think it's not part of the culture. Again, at least in the US, I don't think it's part of the culture of the business of law. So kudos to this mentor. I hope that that person is still mentoring a bunch of other young compadres who are going out into the world and finding their point of genius. I think that that's a great place to spend time. I think that the way that we get sort of shifted into this growth mindset, curiosity, finding our point of genius, really being able to identify what that looks like is unfortunately and fortunately through that soft skill development that everyone seems to get squeamish when we talk about. It isn't a matter of book study. It isn't a matter of reading about it, watching YouTube videos about it. It's a matter of interacting with other humans and learning that skill set in those interactions. And I think that, to be curious is fantastic, but taking that one step further and being able to be curious with others is really what's going to kind of take us from this, positioned, fixed, always correct mindset into what can I learn here? Where are there opportunities for me to evolve? How can we think about this in a more efficient way? How can we think about this in just a different way? There's a fantastic gentleman from Disney, Duncan something, I forget his last name, but I've seen him keynote a few talks, and he talks so eloquently about curiosity being white space and how our creativity really links with curiosity, and people's best ideas are often like in the shower when they have nothing else to, distract their time and attention. And I just think in the world that we live in, we don't have a lot of white space. We don't provide a lot of white space for ourselves. And unless you have a mentor who is pushing you in that direction, you really need to find a way to create it for yourself to kind of have that upskill opportunity and certainly more curiosity just, I think, around the horn.
Beautiful. Access your genius, access that growth mindset by creating white space.
Yeah.
There could not be a more compelling narrative, I think, for right now. That's beautiful.
I will also add to that, though, that this is very much a say or do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
It's a very hard skill to harness, right? Like we are just busier than we've ever been. And the pace of that busyness is not slowing down. And so I do think it just becomes so imperative that we set that white space for ourselves because no one else is going to do it.
Agree. But even your example, like a shower, right? Like if I'm struggling with something, get up and walk around it doesn't have to be long. The white space can be short. It's something about taking away that busyness that lets you access that space.
And disconnecting from our screens, from technology, right? It's having one thing that we're thinking about as opposed to the distraction that life is often presenting to us, which is my Teams chat over here, my recording with Sam over here, my personal Gmail over here, my kid that I can hear in the house over here, right? It is, I think, creating space for ourselves for just one task at hand, and then honoring that as sort of our ability to have that white space.
Yeah, agree. And these spaces, right?
Yes.
When we first met, we had a coffee in Arizona, and spitballed.
Yes, absolutely.
For a creative space.
Absolutely.
I've taken this on a huge tangent. I want to get us back to AI. Would you believe? Ford is a leader in this space. I've heard you speak on it. I've heard Darth speak on it. I know you've been doing really exciting stuff. To the extent you can, what are some exciting projects you've worked on, and how are they changing the way that legal is working at Ford?
Our legal department, shameless plug, it's been publicly talked about before, was actually the first corporate legal department to get access to GPT 4.0 before it was released into the market through a legal tech vendor. We had the opportunity to work with that founding team to beta develop some of the skills that exist in the platform now. And with that was sort of also an early access opportunity for a lot of our legal professionals to start to get comfortable with the technology. This was back in 2022, again, before ChatGPT was publicly released to the market. It was so new, it was so exciting, but it also gave us just the time under tension that other corporate legal departments didn't have access to yet.
Yeah.
And I think that time really gave us a head start in terms of not only being able to champion this technology and its immense amount of use cases, but also start to show the gains from it. start to show that there were real, tangible, quantifiable productivity increases, and have our leaders really also champion that.
I mean, and how extraordinary that you've had access since 2022, right? Like when we launched Joseph Q, our Q&A module, which leveraged LLM technology, that was like January 23, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And it was one of the first tools that allowed you as a legal team to query your own documents and then surface that to the business. And we were early.
Yeah,
That was really early in the
that was
market.
really early. Yep.
It was almost category defining. And you were, 6 months before that.
Yeah.
What, given you're probably 2 years ahead than a lot of other teams, like, what would you do differently if you had your time again?
Yeah. This has been a topic that has come up a lot more in the last year or so. And it's sort of ironic given what this technology promises, which is the scale and efficiency to meet increasing volume and velocity.
Hmm.
Ironically, what I think I would probably have done is slowed down a little bit.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is the technology is moving at such a rapid pace. I don't think any of us realized at early days that it was going to move so quickly.
Mm-mm.
And I think that we often, generally speaking, forget to bring our people along on that journey. And I think what that created was a bit of over reliance or dependence on particular platforms as opposed to teaching the skills necessary to evolve with the technology. And so, I think it's important that in this journey, we're making sure that we are taking a human centered approach. And how are the humans using it? Where are their skill gaps? Where can we upskill? How can we think about training? But also coupled with this is so disruptive. Like, this is of our time, sort of the most disruptive technology we will likely see.
Hmm.
That's really scary on a psychological level for a lot of humans. And I think that if you're moving so quickly, adopting new tech, putting out training materials and sort of providing the people opportunities to integrate and to adapt without also considering that people are scared they're going to lose their jobs. People are fearful that if they don't do this set of tasks, that there won't be another set of tasks for them beyond that. That this technology might eventually turn into, super intelligence and be Terminator style and take over the world, right? Like, we have forgotten that at the very core of our beings as humans, that we require psychological safety to be contributing citizens, certainly good employees. And so I think I would have probably slowed down a bit and maybe taken into consideration a little more of bringing our workforce along in this journey. I think we've had to do some backtracking as a result of that. Not that it's a bad thing, but I'm still hearing a lot of fear from folks. And I think it's largely centered around just lack of information and lack of understanding. And I think that that doesn't generate a very conducive environment for adoption generally, but also adoption that is meaningful.
Such good advice. Such good advice.
Slow down, as they
Slow
say.
down.
Yeah.
Slow down. Like, I absolutely think slow down. I see, particularly in our ecosystem, right? Like, techie people in the legal ops space, everyone's running a million miles an hour.
Yep.
Everyone's talking full end-to-end agentic workflows, blah, 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 blah. Most lawyers are like still figuring out how to talk to ChatGPT. Like, for them, a chatbot that talks to your documents is mind-blowing.
Yes.
I showed a team in Spain last week, a new customer, gave them a Q&A tool built on Joseph. And there are like very sophisticated parts of the platform, but ultimately it's a Q&A tool, right? It was like a bomb went off in the room.
Yeah.
That's where most lawyers are. And I think that's such good advice. Like, slow it down. There's so much value to be gained at the low hanging fruit level. And if
Yeah.
we're going to bring these people on the journey, that's where we need to start.
And I think I just want to maybe caveat that with just when I say slow down, and I think when you say slow down, we don't mean don't use the tech, right?
No,
Like, it's not a
no.
stick your head in the sand. This is something I can learn next year. I think it is crucial that we start learning the tech yesterday. But where I think we need to slow down in terms of the folks who are leading these changes or leading this innovation or creating the culture around this change, that's where we need to slow down and really make sure that we're focused on that people first cornerstone.
Yeah.
The tech is the easy part, and it's going to continue exploding at rates that we have not seen probably even yet. The
Mm-hmm.
hard part is the people. The
Yeah.
hard part is getting folks to understand how the technology works, to use the tech in an appropriate way, to not be fearful that, this disruption is going to be so disruptive that, we're going to have Terminators walking down the road tomorrow. That's just not where we are. And so I think we just need to slow down in how we are thinking about that change management and allow people to come with us on the journey.
Yep. I think that's a great caveat. We need to slow down and bring people on the journey. For everyone who's not driving the technological change, don't slow down.
Right.
I
That's
thought
right.
of this the other day. Actually, I hesitate saying this because I really uh, I don't like driving change through fear. I actually don't think it works. But just to be completely frank, like with you and the rest of the world, um, I think if I was a professional, if I worked in professional services right now, the thing that I could do to make me the safest is interacting, engaging, learning, and starting to own, because we don't know what's coming, right? KPMG, like their new intake was 15% less than last year, and they said it was because of AI. Like there are changes coming. And I think the safest thing you can do right now is to move quickly.
Move quickly in this space. I think the other area that we're not talking enough about
Mm.
is in, again, that soft skill development. Like
Yes.
when I actually think about where this is going to displace and the types of tasks that this type of technology is so good at and is going to get better and better, it is not going to replace our human connection, not yet, at least. And I think that there is a massive area of skills there that we don't teach in law schools, that we don't train our professionals, that we don't continue to build when folks go to law firms or to,
Mm-hmm.
corporate legal departments or into other business infrastructures. And I read this article recently that was talking about some of our connection points with other humans are in our own human errors. We look at other humans, see them, making mistakes or saying the wrong word at the wrong time, or inappropriately doing something, and it's almost what draws us together. It's this very unique, like human
Course.
experience, right?
Yeah.
And if the technology is evolving to such a place of perfection, then
Mm.
I think even that skill set will become more important. How do we connect with other humans? How do we communicate with other humans? How do we show up? What does our vibe feel like in those areas? And so I think it's moving fast with learning the technology, adapting to it, starting to become more productive with it. But also in your free time that you have as a result of this higher level of productivity, investing in skills that are human to human, right? That a machine is not likely to replace because it is truly a unique experience among our species.
Mm. Again, hope, love it. Um, I'm conscious of the time. You're a very busy person. I want to move on. One of the privileges that you have at Ford is investment, data scientists, a team of AI people who help you build these tools, test these tools, etc. One of the things I see across the market, probably with people who are not in that position or teams that are not in that position, is they're hitting a wall with Copilot. They're hitting a wall with generic tools. Um, and I want to be clear, I don't think it's that they can't do it. I think it's that they're getting to a point where they say, oh God, the investment required to get me to 100% or what I think I need in order to launch is too much. What's your experience there? What's your advice to people? What are your thoughts on that? A
Yeah.
provocation.
Yeah. I there are some brilliant people in the industry who are creating fantastic frameworks to think about sort of adoption and integration of this type of tech.
Mm-hmm.
Because yes, it can be very overwhelming. It feels like boiling the ocean, particularly if you're starting now. And so I can empathize and appreciate sort of that perspective. Danielle Benecki, who runs Baker McKinsey's, data science AI arm created this fantastic pyramid. I highly recommend your listeners look it up about sort of a sample Gen AI tech stack. At the top is, our custom Gen AI solutions. Below that is, multi-practice area tools. Below that is productivity tools. Below that is sort of infrastructure tools.
Cool.
And I think a really great way to think about creating space for yourself to learn these platforms, to understand how they work, to really see the value in them is by excuse me, by simplifying. um, I think we often make things more complicated than they need to be. We think that this highly specialized, highly custom workflow we have is the best area for us to start
Mm.
using Gen AI.
Mm-hmm.
I think the better area is actually in simple tasks, summarization, drafting, reviewing content, comparing information to reference material, and in those productivity layer tools. The co-pilots, the chat interfaces that perhaps your company has deployed, the workflow tools like Josef that potentially exist in your organization. It's in that productivity layer that
Mm-hmm.
we can get comfortable. It feels lower risk. There's often very high value in getting you out of sort of this information gathering and processing area and into, judgment and knowledge, which is really where we want people to be. And so I found that actually those productivity tools, if given very small tasks, are the best place for people to start. I think a lot of the folks who are fatigued or hitting a wall with those tools are the folks who are trying to boil the ocean. The folks who are saying, I have this very complex work stream and I'm trying to push this productivity tool into that work stream to solve it. I think that we need to focus a little bit more simplified until people get comfortable, understand value,
Mm-hmm.
and are really able to, understand which tasks and workflows are best suited for this type of technology. Prime example, I had someone reach out recently. We have access to Copilot within our organization. And they were like, how in Copilot could I structure a rule so that every time someone sends me an email in Outlook, it notifies me of, that particular email. And I was like, oh, we don't need Copilot or Gen AI for that. There's a function in Microsoft Outlook that you can generate rules in your inbox, and
Mm-hmm.
that already exists there. And this person was like, oh, that's fantastic. And so I think there is sometimes this overcomplication, right? I don't think I've been able to do this task previously, or this feels complex. And so I'm going to try to hit technology in the hardest and toughest way to it, when in fact, there's probably a much simpler answer to the problem that you're having.
Yeah.
And we are just making it more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah. Great advice. And I see so many use cases coming now from the lawyers because they're more exposed to AI, saying, oh, we can finally solve this problem. I was like, you could have solved that problem since the 1970s. But whatever, it brings them to the table. So that's great.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, you teach at Arizona State University. You teach AI and law. Um, Tell us about that course. Why do you do it? Why do you think it's important? And how are we going to set up the future lawyers and legal practitioners for success?
Yeah. So Arizona State University, the College of Law there, has been at the forefront of sort of integrating AI aptitude into their curriculum for several years. Dean Stacy Leeds, who is the dean of the law school, along with Gary Marchant, who is Regents Professor and runs their Law Science and Technology Center, have really been just huge, huge advocates of changing the way we think about education for law students, and really making sure that we're giving law students the opportunity to have skills in a cutting edge area, and really giving them a leg up in the marketplace with skills that are useful, right? Things that are tangible and are actually going to be relevant and deployable in the way that they're going to work. Um, all of that said, and this is not anything against ASU, I think generally speaking, our law school, the business of law school, is really not servicing law students very well in terms of collaborating effectively with the people who are going to hire those law students. I've
Mm-hmm.
now sat on a number of panels where it's sort of education plus industry plus law firms, and the educational institutes are saying, well, first and second year lawyers need to be trained on the job. The law firms are saying, no, they should be taught some of these skills in law schools, particularly with the evolution of, where we are in tech. And then the clients who are paying the law firm bills are saying, well, we don't want to pay for first and second year associate rates. And so I don't know how you get a third year associate without having first and second years kind of ahead of that. And so I think there's going to be a large overhaul of what sort of our educational system looks like, and necessarily so, because we're not teaching any of the skills that we talked about here today. We're not teaching technology, like a lot of the so I teach two classes at ASU Law School. I co-teach an artificial intelligence, a general class with Gary Marchand, who I just mentioned. And then in the fall, I've created and teach a class that's called AI in Legal Operations and Innovation. So more specific to operational function and how we're thinking about change management. In terms of both classes, we always start the class with a practical hands-on keyboard class where we walk the students through, here are the technologies available to you. Here's how you can think about using them. Open up perplexity.ai. Let's go through a research question. Open up your legal research platform. Let's go through a prompt on how to get the best output. Let's look at ChatGPT. Okay, great. Is this an accurate answer? Let's talk about hallucinations. Hey, you're creating a visual presentation. Let's go to Midjourney and talk about how to create, visuals for that. But very few law schools are training students in that way. I would say too, the class I teach on ops and innovation, we also go through, how do you use Excel? Like, what's a valuable way that as a lawyer, I could potentially use this in my practice to make myself more efficient? How do you think about change management? Last year, I had Darthon, my colleague, come in and do an entire presentation on storytelling. How do you sell something to someone? There are so many valuable skills that are adjacent to the work that we do that are going to become so much more important. And so for me, I feel so passionately about bringing that to these law students because I think that's where we're headed. I think those are the types of skills those students will need in order to set themselves apart in the future, and certainly in order to survive in whatever the legal industry looks like in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, God, if I had done that course, I would have saved myself so much time and pain. I'm jealous. I'm really jealous. That's fun. Okay, two more questions. Driving change at an organization like Ford. I imagine it's not like driving change at Josef or a startup or some of the startups that you used to work at or you founded. How do you do it?
Yes. People first approach. I
Yeah.
think, again, we so often want to just expect that people will adapt. This is so great. Look at this shiny new thing that we have for you. It's going to make you so much more productive, without sort of recognizing the whole human experience around that type of change. And so I think, creating a slow change management infrastructure, slow and efficient. We are taking into consideration all the necessary components. We might be moving quickly, but we haven't overlooked important areas. And I think just the communication with the people around that. Some people are, better suited to hearing about change in person. Some people prefer it in a training. Some people prefer hearing about it at a town hall. Making it digestible for everyone and making the leaders accessible to answer questions about it. We, again, sort of shameless shout out, our leadership here at Ford is so fantastic about opening up to questions. Even our C-suite, during like a lot of our town halls, they take cold questions from the audience. And I think it's such a valuable thing because a lot of times employees have hard questions and they ask them. And here is this leader being transparent, on stage telling you why and how and the what behind it. And I think that there's a lot of value in that for people feeling like they're a part of the journey and involved in the process. So I don't think enough can be said about the people component of change and really making sure that you're meeting folks where they're at, and allowing them to be curious about why the changes are happening.
Nice circle back. Um, I mean, as you're talking, right? Like, yes, 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 agree completely. The question is like, how do we forget? Like, feels so true. Um, feels so obvious in retrospect, but so easy to forget. Final question. The final question I end all of my fireside chats with, which is, what is one question we should be asking ourselves about AI, law, or legal ops, but aren't?
Yeah, Sam, you and I talked about this at the beginning. I actually had kind of a hard time with this question. I'm not sure why have thought about the gaps in my own knowledge and where we could be improving and optimizing and being better. I think that we are not asking enough about there again the people.
Hmm.
I just really want to hunker down on that
Yep.
human centered
Right.
component here. I think that we often, especially in a corporate environment, people are resources, they're providing value to the company. What is that value versus the cost? I again just think that there's such an important component around psychological safety, around upskilling, around change management, around effective communication, around just connecting on a human level that often gets left behind because we're so busy. And so I think that as an industry, we do need to be asking a little bit more about the people. How are they doing? How are they adapting? Are there areas that we could be improving here? Do we need to slow down for some? Where are there opportunities for us to improve in this area? So I think I'm going to close out with just making sure that we're really focused on the human centered approach to this
Hmm.
technology and these changes.
Beautiful. How do we make space to focus on the people?
Yep,
Love it.
absolutely.
Whitney, thank you so much for your time.
This was so fun, Sam. Likewise. Hopefully, we got to your place of genius during our call.
Always, immediately.